Hey, what's going on left, right, out? Like any other day, news day, there's always something interesting going on around the world. And with internet, we can all see it happening, which is comical and sometimes sad. Oh, dang, I forgot my pencil. But anyway, so we'll start off with the California thing, which I talked a little bit about yesterday. And by the way, this is September 15th. So the recall election looks like it's a no-go, and Newsom will remain the governor of California. And this goes, here's my thoughts on that. All the people that have left California because they freaking were fed up with it, I blame you, in a sense, because you guys you tucked and ran, and you went to other states and you started screwing them up. So staying and fighting for your own state, and now there's not hardly anybody left to fight for it. I mean, it wasn't even close. It was like, so far, I think we got most of the ballots in, maybe at the time of this, maybe over 80% or whatever, and it's like 70, almost close to 70% voted no on the recall. Now, that doesn't mean that they're voting for Newsom in a sense. They kind of are. He's got another year left. But look at what this guy has done to the state. And I'll just bring up one, because that hypocrisy, I mean, I can disagree with his policies, but the guy puts in mass mandates or whatever, then he's gallivanting around and having dinners with, tens of people, and circumventing his own lockdowns and mask mandates. I mean, this is hypocrisy of the highest order. And then the guy, granted, he's the governor, and there's other local, obviously, leaders, but he's shutting down businesses, allowing other businesses to stay open, and right beside him, destroying people's lives in a sense. It's astounding. So I kind of blame the people that have left California on that one. What's going to happen? You're going to have more rats leave that sinking ship. I know people that I listen to right now that I follow. They were pretty much, to me, they were kind of banking on this, that maybe the life would change, because now you got to wait another year in election. And sure as the sun sets, there's going to be either him or another person are going to be reelected, or elected in there. So it's the one state or one party state over there. So it might as well, I don't know what to tell you, but there's going to be more people leaving there. They're going to bring more problems to these other states. It's more rats leaving the ship. And I don't know if that's by design, or you can conspiratorially, is it by design? I mean, you're worried about me as if I was a Biden-esque type person, and I'm worried about these other states doing their own thing. And maybe the best thing is to push other people to move into those states to kind of quell them down. I don't know. That's a thought. But anyway, it doesn't look like the recall thing is going to go through. The other thing, I was going to talk about a lot of economic stuff, but here's something, because we're last video or last podcast, we're trying to get these. I'm going to try to get these on a podcast format. But yesterday I talked about accountability in the military, and within recent history, we've seen that Lieutenant Colonel, and I can't remember his name. He's a Marine, and he came out and pretty much put his 17-year career on the line, and he's getting forced out, if not court-martialed, for demanding accountability. And I'm kind of doing the same thing, demand accountability. But here's so if you haven't been, if you're not on the same train yet, this should affirm that the people that are in charge are not being held accountable. Their own peers aren't holding them accountable. Our own government's not holding them accountable. But apparently there's a new book, probably seen it because it's probably big news, I'm sure, but a new book by Bob Woodward and Robert Costa, not Acosta, Costa, two just bastions of greatness there. But anyway, they come out with a book, and in there they talk about General Milley and some of his actions during the last days of the Trump administration, specifically after the January 6th thing. And we knew that he was doing some funky stuff to begin with, right after that, because he made some claims, he made some assertions afterwards. But apparently he made a call. And now I know he had in there, it also talks about a secret meeting or a brief with other people in the Pentagon about making sure that he's around if there's any orders given. But for some twisted reason, he thought that President Trump at the time would launch some last-minute attack on China or something. Doesn't make any sense whatsoever. It baffles the mind. But anyway, apparently he called this General Lee and gave him, he said he'd give him advance warning of any attack that could possibly be ordered by Trump, out of some, I have no idea. To think that Trump would leave and leave his office with a hot war going on with China, and Trump hasn't started a war during his whole administration. In fact, yeah, he did bomb a few things, but I think he was gone in a lot of regards. But he was orchestrating more of a withdrawal from Afghanistan and an organized withdrawal from Afghanistan, and he didn't go to war with anybody else. I don't know what this guy was thinking, but anyway, he made this call. He told me to give him advance warning. That's the craziest crap I've ever heard from a general, military officer. Give advance warning of attack. So I think about it this way. My initial thought was okay, what kind of attack would possibly happen to the Chinese from Trump? Well, how it would be some kind of retaliatory attack. Otherwise, you have to get approval from Congress. I guess who gets approval from Congress anymore. But would it be cruise missiles or would it be air assets? Okay, well, either way, there's American men and women who are under the charge of General Milley, ultimately, as the highest ranking, where he's in the Joint Chiefs or whatever, as one of the higher ranking generals in the military. He's essentially putting them at risk, because even if we attack China and he gave them forewarning, the Chinese can either circumvent that attack or whatever, retaliate, and it would be against things that attack them. More than likely the air assets. Supposedly they have countermeasures for stealth bombers. I don't know if that's true or not totally, but I'm sure that they have reasonable abilities to retaliate against naval assets within the region. They can launch Tomahawk missiles, or air assets, whether they be more than likely they could be launched from a carrier group or from some land bases, if it can, like a B-2 bomber or something like that. But regardless, he put service members in at risk if there was going to be an attack. General Milley was willing to sacrifice those service members in order to give heads up to China. Then I looked at it the other way too. So if the Chinese general gets this call from a senior leader of the American military saying, hey, I'm going to give you a heads up, or hey, there's a possible attack, my little spider senses go up that this is an actual conversation that's going on over in America within the inner circles of the military, that there possibly could be an attack against my nation. I mean, that's the kind of stuff that's going through my mind. It's like, why would you get a call that we'll give you a heads up on an attack? Like, well, my process is like, okay, well, we might get attacked. Like, what's going on here? Excuse me. So regardless, okay, so taking all those things down the line, this is conduct unbecoming of a military officer or of anybody in the military. People have been sent to prison for less, been court-martialed for lesser accusations. I mean, obviously, this is a huge accusation. If this is true, which right now what we should be doing is members of the Senate or whatever, they should be demanding any kind of documentation that is possible, that could be possibly related to this event, and they should be looking at that, because you want to talk about that's treasonous, man. That's one of the most blatant things I've ever seen anybody do, and what it does is it lends discredibility to the military itself. One of the institutions that we always looked upon as being credible, but where is the peer groups? Where is the Commandant of the Marine Corps? Where are these other high-ranking generals? Why aren't they calling this guy to task? Is he really that kind of like a megalomaniac that he's locking these other generals into place? Because I know he had that meeting where he kind of like had everybody look him in the eye, told them they better go through him before anything goes down. But this is definitely something that needs to be looked into in possible charges. If anything, I believe the Senate has to do a lot of this when it comes to a general hit, that kind of high-ranking officer. I mean, I can't remember exactly. It's not too many days you go around and think about court-martialing a general, or anybody with a star. So I mean, I can't remember the procedures on how you would go about that, whether that'd be an actual, UCMJ articles drafted and put forth, or the Senate would have to do it. But I believe the Senate does a lot of this. But anyway, it's definitely conduct unbecoming, and it lends discredibility upon the military service itself, and upon the traditions of the military. Just dishonorable, completely unfounded. You think about what General Flynn went through for some little misstep but these guys are like literally. I think Blinken. I didn't. I need to get the quote on that, but I believe he just perjured himself in front of Congress as well. You have Fauci, but nobody's been held accountable. Anybody of this certain persuasion doesn't get held accountable when it comes to lying to authorities. But you happen to stumble on your words from another persuasion, and you might even have a SWAT team raid on your house in the middle of the night, i.e. Roger Stone and General Flynn. You might have pretty much all your financial and means ransacked, in order to defend yourself. It's incredible what we are going through in this country. But so we need to find out if this is true. We need to make sure that this guy's held accountable. If anything, General Milley should not be in charge. His confidence from I'm sure the people that he has under his command is dwindling, and he needs to be removed immediately. I could just imagine if something like this happened to, let's say, a captain of a carrier group, or an admiral of a carrier group, or even some kind of boat commander in the naval services or whatnot. These guys get relieve the command all the time for weird stuff, and there's various reasons they justify it. This is one of the most blatant things I've ever seen done, and it's amazing that it was put in a book of all things. So hopefully, we need to see if this is true. Like I said, they need to subpoena everything with regards to that: phone calls, documentations, meetings, anywhere around that time frame, and find out what this guy was doing. Because this is, I don't want to understate it. This is a big deal, man. This is a big deal, like a huge deal. It's astounding to me because we pride ourselves in the military, civilian leadership. It didn't matter who was in command. There's a lot of us that didn't like Obama. All right, but we took an oath to the Constitution, and he's the commander in chief. As long as it's a lawful order, and we are bound to to execute that order. So this is if it doesn't get prosecutor or in some sense any kind of and nobody's held accountable, this establishes a deadly precedent for whoever. It doesn't matter if it's on your team or the other team, because I don't call them teams, but establish a precedent like this, then you don't know what's going to come next. And when it goes against you and somebody uses this established Rubicon crossing here, you might not be so happy about it. But anyway, so we can go on. There's some interesting things brewing in China. So you want to talk about China and that, but the Chinese economy, which has always been a farce. It's been propped up by us. We've been utilizing their pretty much slave labor and shipping them dollars, and it's been, I think, a systemic plan of theirs to weaken us, and that's a whole other thing. But anyway, they're starting to see some kinks in the armor in their own propped up false economy, and we might have like a Lehman type default is what people are calling. I don't know if it's exactly that, but one of their large institutions is apparently not going to make a payment here to some of the banks, and we're going to start seeing some defaults over there. Now, will that dovetail into something over here? I don't know. It seems like our market just are blind to anything, any bad news. Like I said, they can melt up as easy as they can melt down. It depends on the policies that are chosen by the monetary overlords and the Fed, and somewhat the fiscal overlords in the government. Which you kind of got to look out for either possibility. What else do we have going on here? I had a list of this stuff, but the General Milley thing was just so outstanding. I can't believe that. But yeah. So while I'm even talking here, when I was putting this up, he responded. He said, "Oh, this is just normal regular communications." I cannot think of one reason why that is even considered. Oh, here's one. Okay, so this has popped in my head because I remember this. I remember somebody getting relieved of duty. Granted, he was some kind of naval commander. I can't remember what he was, but he was a logistics commander, I think. Now, you'd have to look this up on yourself, but I remember him getting relieved of duty because he was giving heads up. And I remember this going on ships and going to ports. As a Marine, so we were on naval ships going around. And for some reason, before we would know where we were porting, guys, at these ports would know we were there. They knew the schedule of the ships, so they'd have, because they want to make money, so they'd have all kinds of stuff there waiting for us, even before we knew. It was like this secret intelligence apparatus of commerce, around there, and you could see how that, it could either be leaked, but we always joked around, how these guys knew. But I remember somebody getting relieved of command because he was actually telling people in advance, these ports, that, hey, this ship is going to be in this AO, and we're going to port, and and I don't know if he got a kickback from it. That's what it was, bribery. So yeah, there's a different additional element there. But I can see that is definitely unbecoming of an officer for sure, and as bribery. And but it's, to me, that pales in comparison to subverting the chain of command when it comes to the commander in chief, with regards to having a hot war with the preeminent threat in the world militarily. Granted, the possibilities of having a hot war with China are so remote, I can't even believe it. Because why in the world would China even engage in a hot war with us when they can just watch us destroy ourselves? That's pretty much what they're doing. And then all while, playing their cards right. I mean, you never stop your enemy from destroying themselves. I mean, let's just cut and dry. Just don't get in the way of your enemy when he's destroying himself. All right. Well, so, in the economy, oil is on the way up. What else is new? Fed is in a corner. They can't do anything. They raise interest rates. They crash everything. They sit on their arses and expand the money supply, and things go up. I'm almost tired of talking about it. It's either you realize what's going on or you don't. And I don't know how. I'm past the point of saying save the country. I'm in the point of saving your states, and I'm making sure you elect the right people at the local level and get to where the states are financially, productivity wise, set to when this thing collapses. And it's not going to happen just in a day. Like if you study some of these other empires like Rome and whatnot, these things happen over time, and then there are pinnacle moments that we look back on through our history and say, okay, well, this is how we're going to define the end of this empire. When in reality, that degradation took place over a period of time, and then you had like an invasion of this town. But why was it successful? Well, it was because during this whole period of time, what used to be significant military apparatus is slowly degraded through its own decadence. Where I'm referring to some of the Roman stuff, but we can look at other things. I mean, at best, when we go to this thing, at best, I'm like hoping for a British Empire collapse where we still are have somewhat reasonable living standards. But who knows what's going to happen. That's pretty much all I want to cover right now. I mean, you can get the news from some other things that are going on. I was gonna on the General Milley thing. I think this has kind of taken us to the point where you can't even trust the military. There's the waning trust of the military is the big issue here in its highest ranking officers. Granted, at the lower level, sons and daughters of America, it's pretty hard not to trust those guys, and they're usually doing it for the honorable reasons. And the low ranking, the field officers, the company grade officers, and that level of stuff is still widely held by honorable people. But after, I guess the downstream effects of 9/11, man, we don't trust any part of our government. And our own government's turning on us, and the intelligence apparatus. Oh, here, okay, this is my last point. I'll let it go. So to me, we don't have three branches of government anymore. Well, actually, you can argue there's some subtraction, some addition in there. So we got the legislative branch, executive branch, judicial branch. I'd argue maybe the legislative branch is like pretty much irrelevant at this point. They're just bickering. They're like the Roman Senate. You might as well just put a bunch of horses up there, and let them neigh at each other. But okay, hypothetically, third branch. I believe that there's another branch of the government that's called the intelligence apparatus. From various, they pretty much operate under secrecy and under threat of, classification threats. I mean, they do whatever the hell they want. They have profiles on many Americans. They spy on a number of Americans without warrants, without any warrant to do it. Not to mention the paper warrant or the justification through the judicial branch under the guise of security. They mingle in other foreign affairs that aren't necessarily on the up and up with the American public. Then you have the Federal Reserve, which arguably the most powerful branch of government in my opinion. They're not even a branch of government. They're a private entity with the largest shareholders being a number of different banks around the world, mainly from what we can discern, member banks from around the country. But there is apparently international banks that are also part of that, which you can argue that any of our larger institutions are international. But anyway, to me, they are the preeminent force of government, even though they're supposed to be a private institution. But their policies have more ramifications on us than any government policy. And then of course, I say the intelligence apparatus, because they pretty much are operating as if they have no oversight. I don't know who's over. There's supposed to be, congressional oversight, but I haven't seen anything. I haven't seen anybody held accountable for lying in front of Congress when it comes to those guys. I haven't seen anybody put the brakes on some of their programs. And in fact, I'm seeing them kind of more green light. And you have like former President Bush coming out and saying that, American citizens are equal, if not worse than Al-Qaeda members, which, ironically, the same people I'm talking about created Al-Qaeda in a sense, or at least they funded them, armed them, trained them. You can say that about almost any terrorist organization. And then let's go, okay, there. Speaking of terrorist organizations, so I know I've harped on Afghanistan and what's going on there. So if you remember the retaliatory attack, and this goes back to how the intelligence community and military itself are creators of a lot of this terrorism. And Ron Paul used to say this a lot of times, blowback. But so the retaliatory strike for the 13 Marines, sailor, and soldier that were killed ended up killing like a bunch of kids, and they said it was an ISIS-K dude, and then it turns out they had to backtrack on that because some of the reports are, hey, there's a lot of collateral damage there. So what purpose was that strike? It definitely wasn't a justification from the deaths of those service members. Like, you didn't avenge their deaths or anything by that, because you didn't do anything. All you did is, you can just count the number of terrorists you just created, in my opinion, because you just killed a bunch of kids, you just affected a bunch of families. And what are they going to think? Oh, well, I guess they were just trying to avenge the death of these other people. It's justified. No, you just killed their kids. You just affected their lives. This is the kind of insanity that is being portrayed to the American public, and that we end up paying for later on. Now, granted, more than likely, we'll have somebody in there training them and arming them again, even more so than we have. We'll create the next terrorist cell to justify whatever kind of existence the intelligence apparatus needs to do whatever they want to do. But if you just go through history, which I don't have time here, and maybe one day I'll do something like that, where you can go through all these terrorist organizations and their nexus or their nodes of creation, and you can tie it to a lot of our either interventions or operations, and how they get weapons, how that node can be then tied to how we operate over in a certain region. It's incredible how we've pretty much created the problem, the Hegelian dialectic, they call, create the problem and then come up, have the solution ready. And then who gets screwed? It's us, the American people. But anyway, I'm going to leave it here because we're going a little long in the tooth here on this one. I just wanted to bring that up because that's a pressing issue. There's a lot of other news out there, but to me, this is one that, the Gen Milley thing shakes the very foundations of some of our most beloved institutions, the services of our military. But anyway, I'll talk to you later. Bye.